This week we're learning the Sikha of Shabbos Parshas Axharei-Kedoshim Tafshin Nun Aleph. It was also Yud Gimel Iyar, which, as we'll see later in the Sikha, is the yahrzeit of the Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh Leib. The Sikha can be found in Sefer HaSichas Tafshin Nun Aleph, Chelik Beis, page 504. Just to note, important for the continuation of the Sikha as well, of course this is a Sikha coming very soon after the Sikha of Chof Ches Nisan, where the Rebbe spoke so strongly about the need that we all have to bring the Geula. And since it was so soon after that, the Farbrengens of the Rebbe that usually started off with singing the Nigun on the Rebbe's kapitel, at this point in time the Farbrengens started off with singing the Nigun. Chassidim would sing the Nigun, Zol Shein Zayin de Geula, or later changed to Es Kumt Shein de Geula, but there will be some mention of this pretty early on in the Sikha. So the Rebbe starts off by saying that a continuation to that which we've been speaking about recently, about the Geula Ha'amitis V'Ashleima, that we are waiting, anticipating, hoping every day that it will come on that day, as this is also brought out and seen in the halacha that if a person makes a neder, a vow, that he will not drink wine on the day that Mashiach will come, then according to halacha, from that day on, he's not allowed to drink wine, because of course we believe and we're waiting for Mashiach to come today, immediately. And we've been speaking about all of the things that Yidden, every single Yid needs to do in order to bring the Geula. So it is very appropriate to discuss what the Geula is all about, what's the content, what does Geula mean, and with this will make it easier for us to understand what our avodah needs to be in order to bring about the Geula, and how we need to prepare ourselves for the Geula. Now, of course, the content of each and everything is expressed in the name of how it is called. And the same thing is true regarding the Geula, that we could get some sort of idea about what the Geula is if we have a look and examine the word Geula itself. The Rebbe explains the idea of the Geula is expressed in the Torah in a number of different ways. Of course, first and foremost, we have the four expressions of the Geula in the pasuk of V'hitzeisi, V'hitzalti, V'ga'alti, V'lakachti. We also have the fifth expression, V'hevesi. Now, even though all of these expressions generally are the idea of going out of Golus, nevertheless, there's a certain advantage, something special about the word Geula, as will be explained later in the Sikha, of course. And the Rebbe says that we could say that it's specifically because of this special idea of the word Geula, this is why generally the main name that we refer to the redemption is to all of the Geulas, and specifically the Geula Ha'amitis V'Ashleima, the way Yidden refer to it is just plain with the word Geula. And Davka, this Geula, the last Geula of this Golus, is considered the Geula Ha'amitis V'Ashleima, the ultimate Geula, but it's still referred to as with the name Geula, because it is this word Geula that expresses really what Geula, what redemption is all about, and specifically the Geula out of this Golus. The Rebbe points out something that we just mentioned before, that regarding the word Geula, the Rebbe says this is like the famous Chabad Nigun, Zol Shein Zayin de Geula, that was sung just before the Sikha, as well as, of course, other expressions and Nigunim similar to this, Al Pi Minig Yisrael. So now the Rebbe starts discussing the word Geula in Seif Beis. When we look at the word Geula, we see that something that seems very strange. Geula has all of the letters of the word Goyla, which means Golus. It just has the one additional letter, the letter Aleph. In fact, the connection between Goyla and Geula in that sense, we see in the following Medrash. There's a pasuk in the Nevuah of Zechariah where he sees a menorah, and he sees V'gula al Roisha, an oil bowl on top of the menorah. The Medrash says this word Gula, there's a machloikus in the Medrash between two Amoraim, what this word Gula represents in this particular Nevuah. So one Amorah says that the word Gula is from the word like Goyla, it means Golus, And the other one says it's from the word geula. It's indicating of the geula of the Yidden. So here again we see the same letters indicating two opposite things. So the Rebbe says it's known, what's explained regarding this, that the additional aleph that we have into the word geula, making it in geula, the aleph refers to the Eibishter, alufoi shalolim, the aleph, the boss of the world. And by the avoid of every single Yid, bringing in the aleph, revealing, drawing down Hashem, the boss of the world, the aluf, the one in control, the master of the world, into the Golus. That's the way we change around from Goyla into Geula. The Rebbe says we need to understand, seemingly, the idea of Geula, of course, is exactly the opposite of Golus. If that's the case, how does it make sense to say that the word Geula should include inside of itself all of the letters of the word Goyla, of Golus? Furthermore, the Geula is, so to speak, made up completely from that word Goyla. And so when you look at most of the letters, all that it's saying, what most of the letters are all about, is the Inyan of Goyla, the idea of Golus. As the Rebbe points out in footnote 13, even the order of the letters, Gimel, Vav, Lamed, Hey, didn't change. The only thing that was added was one single aleph. Furthermore, even the beginning of the word, the Gimel, remains the same. It's the same Gimel for Goyla and then for Geula. The significance of that, of course, just to clarify, which is not directly in the Sikha itself, but as it's explained in many places, that the order of the letters, as the Alter Rebbe explains in Shari Yichud Ve'amunah, the order of the letters also have a lot to say about what each letter is expressing in the meaning of that word. And the earlier on a letter is within the word, the more significant it is. So if the first letter is the Gimel, which means it's the most significant letter in the word, so it was the most significant in the letter in the word Goyla, of Golus, and then it's the same letter that's also the most significant in the word Geula. Siv Gimel, says the Rebbe, we could explain it in the following way. Geula does not mean that by going out of Golus we are abandoning and leaving behind everything that we had previously in Golus, the whole life of Golus. On the contrary, Geula means that everything that we had before, which was enslaved in the Golus, is not being nullified, is not being excluded, we're not canceling it. Rather, that same Metzias, those same things that we had previously are now becoming freed. And when we speak about the special quality of the Geula HaAmitis V'Ashleima, is that everything will be freed. There will be nothing lost in Golus. We're not going to leave anything behind in the Golus. To use the words of Torah Emes, refers to certain things as Nidochim and Oivdim. There are certain things that are lost or dispersed, and even these things will be redeemed. In other words, the Geula is going to be a complete Geula, both in the quality and the quantity of all things, from the greatest things to the smallest things. And so too, each and every Yid, and all of the Yidden, B'noreinu, B'skeneinu, with our young and our old, with our sons and our daughters, everyone will be redeemed, as well as also everyone's portion in the world, as the Pasuk says, Kaspam, Uzahava Mitam, their silver and their gold, etc. That means that everything will be redeemed, along with everyone's achievements in Golus. Every single aspect of the Golus will be elevated and redeemed. So the Geula is going to come to free the person and all people, and in fact even the Goyim and all matters of the world, along with every detail of every person's life. In other words, all the positive things of the Golus are going to continue, and we're going to have them as well. What's going to be nullified is the Golus state of things. That means that the concealment that's covering over what everything is really, the godliness inside of it, that concealment will be removed, and the subjugation to the ways of Teva, to the ways of nature and the Gashmias of the world, that all will be removed. As the Rambam tells us, Al Ya'al Al Alev, do not think that in the times of Mashiach, anything from the order of the world will become nullified, or it will be anything novel in the world. Rather, the world is going to continue running its normal course. And as the Chachamim say, Ein bein olam hazeh, there's no difference between the Moisa Mashiach and Shibud Malchus, and these days in Yemais HaMashiach, besides for Shibud Malchus, besides for the fact that we're not subject to the nations, to other governments. And what will be the Chiddush? That everyone is going to return to the true religion. And that Mashiach is going to fix the whole world to all serve the Eibishter together. As the Pasuk says, Kios efechel amim safa brura, that the Eibishter is going to make all the nations call out in a clear language. Everyone calling out in the name of Hashem and serving Hashem together. Now we can understand why the word Geula includes all the letters of the word Goyla, but with that additional Aleph. What is Geula coming to do? It's not coming to negate the Golus. On the contrary, it's coming to elevate the life in Golus by freeing everything from the Golus, and therefore transforming that itself into a Geula state by revealing how in all the matters of the Golus, in the Goyla, that Aleph, the Alufei Shaloyla, meaning revealing Hashem in the Golus, in that way removing the concealment of all matters of Golus which are covering over its true entity. By that we are revealing the Eibishter, Elikus, godliness the way it is in everything, which this is of course the whole purpose of all matters of Golus, of all matters in the world, for which it was created by the Eibishter. So in that way the Goyla is transformed into Geula. And the Rebbe goes on to explain, the Geula, which we just said is revealing that Aleph, the Eibishter in the Goyla, in the Golus, is about revealing the emes, the truth, and the pnimius of all matters of Golus, and all things that were done in the time of Golus. That is revealing godliness in all matters of the world, seeing how every single thing in the world was leading to and revealing the glory of the Eibishter. As the Mishnah says, Kol Masha Bara Kadosh Baruch Hu Ba'olam, whatever Hashem created in the world was all created to reveal Hashem's glory, the glory of the Eibishter. Se'iv Dalet. So far what we have explained is how it makes sense that the Geula should include the word Goyla. Because the idea is the Geula is lifting up the Golus, not negating it, but lifting it up. But the Rebbe says we still need further clarification. Why should this idea of lifting up the Golus be something so crucial in the whole process of Geula? To the extent that you're calling the whole idea of Geula, which again is the Goyla together with that Aleph, which we just said also, that the name of something indicates what it's all about. So why is this aspect of the Geula, the fact that it was elevating the Geula, has become so important in the whole matter of Geula that the whole Geula should be called specifically because of this idea? Furthermore, we know that the Chiddush of the Geula is not only about elevating the matters of Golus and the worldly matters, which is, as we said before, where the Rambam says that nothing is going to change, basically everything is going to be the same. But really we know there will be a second period when Mashiach will come, after that first period that we mentioned from the Rambam, and there will be a time when there will be things that are completely new, completely novel things. Things that will change the order of the world. Most importantly, of course, something so fundamental like Tchiyas HaMesim, which is considered a Chidush B'Maaseh Bereishis, something changing the order of the world. So if that's the case, we're really back to the original question, how does it make sense that the whole situation and the state of things La'asid Lavoi, including even those areas and those things that are completely higher and removed from the concept of the world and Golus, as in the second stage, why are we calling that as well with the name Geula, which is still the same word of Golus, of Goyla, with that additional Aleph? So just to clarify again, what we answered so far and what the question still remains. The original question was, why the word Geula, which seems so different to Golus, why should it even include the letters Goyla in it at all? We answered that one of the, of course, a very important part of Geula is not about negating the Golus, but we're going to elevate the Golus, we're going to reveal Hashem, how He's within the Golus, and how everything is really godliness. But the question still remains, Yes, that is something that's going to happen by the Geula, but why does it become such an important part of the Geula for the whole Geula to be called based on this name? And especially, there's going to be things in the Geula that are completely removed from anything to do with Golus. The second Kufa, which is completely higher than the world and higher than Golus, etc., why is that too called by the name Geula? But since it is, it's understood that the whole Geula, even the highest points of the Geula, are really still connected with this avodah of bringing that Aleph of the Eibishter into Geula, into the Golus. And in fact, that is what it really makes up the whole idea of Geula, just like in the word Geula is made up from those letters Geula with that additional Aleph. And really, all matters of the Geula, every aspect of the Geula, is to do with this idea about lifting up the Geula, lifting up the Golus, as will soon be explained more in detail. In order to understand this, the Rebbe says in Seif Hey, we're going to understand it based on the first Mishnah of the Pirkei Avos of this Shabbos. The Shabbos we're going to be learning the third Perek of Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, "Istakel b'shloisha dvarim," you should look and examine three things. Ve'eina taboli de aveira, and you will not come to do any aveiros. The Mishnah then goes on to list the three things. Damei ayin basa, you should know from where you came, where you're headed to, and before whom you are going to give an account. So the question is, why does the Mishnah start off with saying, look at three things? Why is it relevant to mention the number? Even if for some reason we need to know the number, Mishnah doesn't have to mention it. If we want, we could go ahead and count how many things there are. As the Gemara sometimes asks this question when a Mishnah mentions a number, minyan olamali, why is it relevant to tell us the number? So the Rebbe says, we could say, one of the explanations is as follows. When the Mishnah says, istakel b'shloisha dvarim, look at three things, and we know that the Mishnah generally is written very, very brief, very concise, and includes many, many things that are hinted within the words. So the Mishnah doesn't necessarily only mean the three things that are to follow, the damei ayin basa, know from where you came, etc. But really there's a more general hayirah, a more general lesson that the Mishnah is teaching us over here. The Mishnah is telling us, histakel b'shloisha dvarim, that generally a person needs to look at the world and see it as there are three inyanim going on. And if you have that attitude, Eina taboli de aveira, you will not come to do any aveiros. What does it mean there are three things? A person may think that maybe the only thing he needs to be aware of is two things. There is, of course, the person himself, and there's the Eibishter Kavayachal, who he serves. Ani nivreisi l'shamash eskoini. There's Hashem, and myself serving Hashem. What else do I need to know? Says the Mishnah, histakel b'shloisha dvarim. You need to realize there is actually three things. Besides yourself serving the Eibishter, Kvayachol, there's a third thing over here. You need to be aware of the world that the Eibishter created, through which you are going to serve the Eibishter. In other words, the whole point of why the Eibishter created a world, why the Neshama came down into a physical body, into this lowliest world, is to fulfill the kavanah that the Eibishter had, nis'ava HaKadosh Baruch Hu, the desire that the Eibishter have to have a dira b'tachtoinim. That a yid through his avodah will refine, will elevate his guf, his nefesh hachiyunis, that's the nefesh habahamis, the gashmius, the physicality and the materialism of the world, making out of all of it a dira for Hashem. How is he going to achieve this? By working with his guf and in his guf down here in this world, fulfilling Torah and mitzvahs. As we know that most of Torah and mitzvahs are all clothed in physical things. And when he does a mitzvah with a gashmi as the object, he is elevating the gashmi, is making it into a keli, into a vessel for Hashem. So for example, you have the mitzvah of tzedakah. The mitzvah of tzedakah is being used as an example. Mitzvah of tzedakah is equal to all the mitzvahs. It's considered the main one of all the mitzvahs of action and surpasses all the mitzvahs. So what happens over here? A person is taking from the toil of his own hands, from his physical money that he had earned, and he's giving away, so to speak, his life, what his earnings, to the Eibishter. And so too in regards to all mitzvahs. So it's about the gashmius of the world. This third thing, stakel b'shloisha dvarim, The idea of a dira b'tachtonim, the idea that we need to take this world and transform it and making it a place for Hashem, is not just a side inyan. It's not only just another thing that's enabling us to do our avodah, but on the contrary, it is actually extremely important, so to speak, for the shleimus of the other two as well. In other words, so to speak, Hashem and the Yid. That since this Ava Kadosh Baruch Hu, since the Eibishter had this desire to have a dwelling place down here in this world, and since Zek Kol Adam, since the whole purpose of man is to make this Dira B'Tachtoinim, therefore it's, so to speak, important for the Shleimus, as if to say, of Hashem, since this is all what Hashem wants. So that's why it's extremely important to have this world for Hashem's sake, so to speak. And so too, as far as the person is concerned, the Zek Kol Adam, this is what he's here for, in order to make the Dira B'Tachtoinim. This idea, to be istakel b'shloisha dvarim, to be aware of these three things, is so crucial and so important that this is why the neshama had come down here into this world through Hashem. That Hashem sent them down into this world. Despite the fact of how high the neshama has been before it came down over here, and as we say, neshama shenasata b'tahoirahi, it was in a place that was totally pure. There's actually no room for impurity, and yet where does the Eibush send it? The Eibush sends it down into the lower worlds, till finally this lowest Gashmi is the world, a place where there's life and there's good. But there's also the opposite of that, a place where there's the opposite of purity. In fact, the neshama even needs to be protected, as we say, the atom meshamra b'kirbi. And all of this is in order to make the dira b'tachtoinim for Hashem. Because apparently you could ask, the fact that the neshama came down into this world, into a physical body, would seem to be opposite and contrary to the usual conduct of the Eibishter. The Eibishter is the ultimate and the source of all goodness and kindness. It is the nature of someone of someone good to do good. So if we have the chesed and the kindness and the goodness of the Eibishter, there should have only been aliyos, only ascents going up. And what's the Eibishter doing? Hashem is taking the neshama and bringing it down into such a big yerida, such a big descent, and into a galus, almost like from a high rooftop to the lowest pit. But since the Eibishter did do this, this obviously shows us how great it is and how amazing it is, this avodah of dira b'tachtoinim, that for this it's all worth it to bring the neshama down here into this world. Not only for the neshama's own sake, because the neshama really doesn't need to be fixed up or corrected at all. Rather, in order to fix up the guf and the nefesh habahamis and your portion in the world, in order to make a dira b'tachtoinim. Because, as we explained, it is dafka specifically through the descent, through the avodah of the neshama down here, making a dwelling place for Hashem. Now, if something is achieved greater than that what the neshama has on its own, rather, it's the very revelation of the essence of Hashem down here. And this special advantage affects the neshama as well, the neshama that came down here, that in addition to the fact that the neshama itself could now reach to a higher place than where it started off from, and it reveals the strength of the neshama, of the powers in the neshama because of these challenges. But in addition to all of that, the neshama now gets a special connection to the gilui, to the revelation of the essence of Hashem that was brought about because of the Yid's avodah and making the dira b'tachtoinim. Now we can understand what the Mishnah is saying. Istakel b'shloisha dvarim. You should always realize that there are three things. That despite the tremendous quality of the neshama of the Yid, which is a chelik elikam imal mamish, truly a part of Hashem, but his avodah has to be that in addition for making a dira, a dwelling place out of himself, out of the Yid, a place for Hashem, that's by revealing his neshama in his guf. And that would be so the neshama is gaining greatly, but in addition to that, you also need to remember to make the world a place for Hashem, and that is the third thing, as we said before, there's takel b'shloisha dvarim, besides for Hashem and yourself, there's also the world, because we need to make the world into a dwelling place for Hashem. And it's specifically when the Yid does this avodah, That's when the Yid reaches his shleimus, his perfection. Because as we said before, Zek Kol Adam, this is really why man is created. Now, even though for the Yid and for the Neshama, temporarily at least, there seems to be a Yerida descent, at least b'chitzonis, at least externally, but really it is dafka through this, that as the Mishnah goes on to say, Ein ataboli de avera, you won't come to sin. In other words, dafka, specifically by making and doing the avodah of dira b'tachtoinim, through istakel b'shloisha dvarim, that's the way you're going to come to Ein ataboli de avera, not to come to transgress. And what does it mean, loyli de avera? Not even to have the ability to do the avera. Says the Rebbe in Seivov, getting back now to the point of geula being the goyla with that extra aleph. Now we can understand this a little better. Geula, as we said before, is not coming to negate and to nullify the idea of golus. Rather, as we said, it includes the whole idea of golus inside of it, goyla. And on the contrary, it's actually going to elevate the golus by inserting that aleph, the alufa shaloilam, by putting Hashem into it. Because as we explained, the whole point is to make a dira b'tachtoinim, to make a dwelling place for Hashem. That includes even the lowliest things, and as they are in golus, to reveal, even in these lowliest things, as they are in golus, the alufei shaloilam, Hashem, the way He's inside of them. And on the contrary, as we said, that's the whole point of geula. Even those matters of geula that are completely higher than the world, and higher than the golus, even the part of geula that seems to be the world is changing, and there's tchiyas hamesim and so on. But what's the whole idea of geula? It's all about the revelation of the essence of Hashem in this most physical world. To make this most physical world and the lowliest world a place for the essence of Hashem. And that's why we can understand why the geula is achieved in all of our actions that we do during the time of golus, during the goyla, that avodah of bringing the aleph, bringing Hashem into our avodah, into the golus. And it's specifically because of this that the word geula, as we said, is made up of all of the letters of the word goyla, including also the first letter being the same. Because again, the point being is that yes, the whole geula, the whole idea of geula, is specifically about elevating this world and making it a place for Hashem. In other words, in addition to the fact that there's a tremendous aliyah that we are going to have, the tremendous ascent that we are going to have in the geula comes through first going through the golus. So that's one idea of the geula. This is similar to what we say the neshama itself shines stronger because it came down into this world. But in addition to this, the geula itself is made up of the goyla with that extra aleph, which means to say that really the dwelling place for Hashem, the dira for Hashem, is achieved dafka in the tachtoinim, in the lowliest things, similar to what we said before, that the neshama itself also ends up benefiting dafka through the idea of dira b'tachtoinim. So just again to summarize the main points that we were just saying, is that just like in the neshama, there's two ideas. There's one thing that the neshama itself is coming to a much higher level because it's doing its avodah. And that would be in the context of golus and geula, that the geula is a better and higher geula. It's being made up dafka because of the golus. But there's furthermore, as we just said, there's also the point, not only for the neshama gaining, so to speak, but there's also the idea that the goyla itself is where the dira, the real dira, could happen. Dafka in this lowly as Gashmi is the world is where the dira of Hashem could happen. Similar to what we said before as well. Dafka after the neshama does the avodah with the world is when it gets its real aliyah. Says the Rebbe in Seif Zayin. All of this is even more emphasized and can be seen in the time of the year that we are in. First of all, in the days of Sfira. Within that itself, we're holding the fourth Shabbos of Sfira, of the 7 complete weeks. And it's the Sfira of Malchus Acharei-Kedoshim. Also the Parshas אחרי-קדושים, the Parsha that we're going to start reading at Mincha, Parshas Amoyer, and finally the date, Yud Gimel Iyar. And the Rebbe starts off by explaining. The avodah of Sfira Soimer, of course, is about refining and elevating the 7 midos of the Nefesh HaBahamis, which is the main avodah that we are doing in the time of Golus. What are we achieving over here? In addition to the fact that we ourselves are becoming holy, we are also bringing about a holiness into the world and into all of the worlds. So in Sfiras Omer, one thing we say is V'etayr v'eskadesh, I am becoming pure and holy. But another thing we say is V'yideze yushpa shefarav b'chol ha'olamis. We're bringing down chayis of Hashem into all the worlds. And that itself brings even more into the neshama of the person that's doing the work. As we say in the tefillah, after Yushpa Shefarav b'chol ha'olamis, we go on to say, Ulesakein es nafshoiseinu v'ruchoiseinu v'nishmoiseinu, that the Eibishter will help us through the Sfiras Omer. This will help us rectify our neshama from all negative things and to purify us and to bring us to the greatest level of holiness. Similar to what we said before, Einat aboli de aveira, that when we get involved in the avoid of elevating the world, this itself helps us come to a higher level, not even to be shaykh to any aveiros, as well as fixing up the world. Through the avoid of Sfiras Omer, which is similar to the idea of bringing the Aleph into Goyla, bringing godliness into all of our matters, refining our 7 midos, that's the way we bring the Gula. And as we say in Sfiras Omer, right after the bracha, that the Eibishter will bring us back the avoid of the Beis HaMikdash in its right place, b'meheira v'yameinu, amen selah. Within Sfira itself, which are divided into 7 complete weeks, specifically this year, when the weeks actually go in the order, the weeks of Sfira go in the similar order of the weeks of from Sunday to Shabbos, because we started Sfira on a Motzei Shabbos on a Sunday. So this is even more emphasized on the 4th Shabbos of Sfira, when we finish the Sfira of Netzach, all the way till Malchus Netzach. And this is, of course, after we had the first Midah, the Midah of Chesed, down to, all the way to Malchus Chesed. Then we had the Midah of Gvura, all the way till Malchus Gvura. We had the Midah of Teferes, all the way till Malchus Teferes, and now we're holding by Malchus Netzach. So what does Netzach mean? Netzach means victory, overcoming the concealment of Golus. We went through Netzach Netzach, the ultimate of victory, Hoyt Netzach, the beauty within the victory, Yisoid Netzach, meaning that it's a permanent victory, and finally Malchus Netzach, Malchus being a reference also to Mashiach, the Nitzach, the victory of Melech HaMashiach by the Geula HaAmitis V'Ashleima. So that's the connection of Sfiras Omer and the days of Sfira to what we've been talking about bringing the Alufay Shaloilam, the Aleph, into Goyla, transforming the Golus into Gula. Further, the Rebbe says in Seif Ches, in Parshas Acharei, we have the Avodah of Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, doing his work in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Pasuk says, Bezois Yavi Aaron al HaKodesh, that with this Seder Avodah, Aaron could come into the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Now, this is similar to the way things are going to be when Mashiach comes, to the state of the way things are going to be by the Gula, when the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. The Kodesh HaKadoshim, of course, we know is the holiest place in the world. The place where Hashem is shining in the most revealed way without any concealments. At the same time, we're speaking about a physical place in this Gashmiistic world. The Kohen Gadol is going in there. A neshama beguf is neshama in a physical body, not like the way it was by Nadav and Avihu, where they had the Ratzui, the great yearning, but without returning. So this is what the avodah of the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim on Yom Kippur. Now the truth of the matter is, in a similar way we really have regarding every Kohen, that the Pasuk says that the Kohenim, Chazal tell us, the Kohenim were all separated, as the Pasuk says, Vayavdei l'Arei l'Akdishay Kodesh Kadoshim. So the Kohenim were separated to be greater and higher than the world, but at the same time they're doing the Avodah in the world. A world where there is some room for things that are not going to be pure, and Dafka there he will be able to fulfill the mitzvah in the beginning of Parshas Emoir, where the Eibishter says to warn the Kohanim that they should not become Tomei. So there is room for a place of impurity. They're working in a Gashmiistic, a physical world, and yet, of course, remaining beyond it. Of course, the ultimate purity is going to be Begul or Amitis Vashleima when Mashiach comes. And really, in a certain sense, we have a preparation for this also now at the time of Golus, when Kohanim need to be careful not to become Tomei. The Rebbe says this itself is a preparation to the greatest Tahara, purity that's going to be La'asid Lavoi, when we're going to be completely pure. And the Rebbe says this also includes, as the pasuk says, emoir. You should tell the koyanim, and then it says v'omarta, which Chazal tell us means you should warn the gdolim, you should warn the adults that they should make sure that the children also don't become tamei. In addition to the fact that a kohen is warned not to become impure, a kohen also has to do his avoid in the Beis Hamikdash, dressed in the big day kohuna. The pasuk says it was lechavoid u'lesifaris, for honor and glory, which means within Gashmias itself it had to be in a beautiful way. In other words, it shows on a shleimus, on a perfection within the Gashmias. In fact, the Rebbe says we can explain why is it that a kohen that served the Eibishter in the Beis Hamikdash, not wearing all of the big day kohuna, should his avodah be possible. As we are told that as long as they have the big day kohuna, then they are considered proper kohenim to do the avodah. If not, then they are not considered proper kohenim to be able to do the avodah. You may ask, the big day kohuna are there l'chaved l'sefaris. It's there to make you beautiful and full of glory, etc. But it seems not to be so important and crucial for the avodah itself. So why are we making such a big deal out of it? And the answer is because in order for the kohen to do his avodah in the Mishkan, in the Beis Hamikdash, to be in the most perfect way, it needs to be perfect begashmius as well. Because the idea is that we need to utilize all gashmiistic things and all the things that we can from gashmius and olam hazeh, utilizing it for kedusha. Of course, by the kohen gadol, this is in a more perfect way, where he has the shmoina b'gadim. And furthermore, the Rebbe says, perhaps this could be the reason why we are told that the kohen gadol needs to be the greatest, also physically the richest, because the shleimus of the kedusha of the kohen gadol is all connected and dependent with the fact that it should also be a shleimus, also begashmius, that also physically he's wealthy, and that the kedusha, the ruchnius, is permeating the gashmius as well. Says the Rebbe now a very interesting thing. Based on what says in the Medrash, on the pasuk Bezois Yaviyarin, that really the Kohen Gadol could go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim anytime, as long as he's going in with this particular Seder that's described in the Parsha. Says the Rebbe, based on that, if the Kohen Gadol could really, technically go in any time into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, says the Rebbe, you know what? The real place of the Kohen Gadol is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or the level of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And in fact, that's going to be revealed by the Geula HaMitis V'Ashleima, when every man is going to be in his perfect way. And the world itself will be in its most perfect way. And all of the negative things will be nullified. Whereas, of course, nowadays, we're not exactly ready for these highest states of Kedusha at any given moment. Because when Mashiach will come, there will be the greatest Kedusha revealed, Dafka, and Lamato in the Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi, which will be the Dir Lo Yizbarech for the Eibishter. So in other words, nowadays we say there are certain limitations and restrictions for the Kohen Gadol. Not necessarily you can always be ready to be there. But L'Asid Lavi will be revealed that the Darg of the Kohen Gadol is always in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. Says the Rebbe in Siftes, like all matters of Torah, which are Ohirah, here too there's Ohirah for each and every Yid. Every single Yid is considered part of Mamleches Koyanim, part of the priestly group that the Eibishter calls Mamleches Koyanim, or even Koyanim G'dolim. And Begilui, in a revealed way, and B'Shleimus is going to be Begula Amitis V'Ashleimu when Mashiach comes. And therefore, every single Yid, as a neshama in a guf, is connected to this level of Kedusha of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the greatest level of Kedusha. In fact, the Rambam tells us, Lo Shevet Levi Bulvad, not only Shevet Levi could be holy, but every single Yid that wants to give himself over to the Eibishter is Niskadish, Kodesh Kadoshim, could be on this greatest level of holiness. Now, based on the Medrash we said before, that really the Kohen Gadol could go in at any given time to the Kodesh HaKadoshim, says the Rebbe, we can now say that this is really within the ability of each and every Yid, as he is in a Neshama in a Guf, to be on the level of Kodesh HaKadoshim. And the Rebbe says that practically this will be so L'Asid Lavi when Mashiach comes. And the Rebbe now goes on to say in the brackets that this will be even more Geschmack based on a story told in Nevi'im. there was a certain time of danger, and Yoshava hid Yoyosh, who was going to be the king eventually. He was a child at the time. And she hid him, the lashon of the pasuk is, b'cheder hamitos, in the bed chamber, which as Rashi explains means in the attic of the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And he was hiding over there for 6 years. Says the Rebbe, from this we understand, if he was hiding over there for 6 years, obviously as he is in this place, the Kodesh HaKadoshim, or the attic of the Kodesh HaKadoshim, so he had obviously all of his physical needs there as well, his food, his drink, his sleeping, etc. How does that make sense? So the Rebbe says, because as we said before, the real place for every Yid is in the Kodesh HaKadoshim. And as will be in a revealed way, it was Nizgala B'Poil. Practically, this came about in a state of Sakana, in a state of descent in the Yerida, similar to what we said before. The whole Geula comes about through the Yerida of Golus. The Rebbe says, this idea, this special Kedusha of a Yid, could also be understood from what says in the beginning of Parshas Kedoshim, we are commanded and given the Koyach, the Parsha that was read together with Parshas Acharei-Kedoshim to you, you should be holy, Ki Kadeshani, because I am holy. That is saying that a Yid, as he's in a Shama, in a Guf, in this Gashmi, is the world, a place where he's told Kedoshim to you that you should be holy, that you need to separate from the rest of the world, and yet what is the Yid's level? He's on a level of Kedusha, and the highest level of Kedusha, like the Kedusha of the Eibishter, as Chassidus explains on the following Maimer Chazal. So just first to explain the Maimer Chazal simply, and then what Chassidus says. The Medrash on the words Kedoshim Tiyu says Yachol Kamoini, which is usually understood as a question. You might think you could be as holy as me. So the Rebbe says, Chassidus says, Yachol Kamoini is to be read as a statement, not as a question. Yachol Kamoini, you can be as holy as me. Ki Kadeshani, you could be on the same level as Kadeshani, because I am holy, you could be holy. The Rebbe now in Sif Yud connects all of this with the Rebbe's brother's Yortzeit. The Rebbe's brother, Rabbi Yisrael Aryeh Leib, whose Yortzeit is on Yud Gimel Iyar. And the Rebbe is going to discuss the name and the lessons and how it's connected with everything we've been speaking about. But first, the Rebbe prefaces and says, even though seemingly it's a name of just one individual person, yet really it has a shaykhus to all Yidden. First of all, of course, all Yidden are one unit, we're all one body. But especially in this case, the first name of the Rebbe's brother is Yisroel. And Yisroel is, of course, a general name of each and every Yid, and of all of Klal Yisroel. As it's known that the neshama of Yaakov, whose name is Yisroel, includes all of the neshamas of Yidden forever. Now, the Rebbe is sort of explaining how we could go ahead and learn Hirois. In this particular case, from the Rebbe's brother's name, so the Rebbe says, based on a famous Hiro of the Rebbe Rashab, that said, generally we know that regarding Tanya, we need to be very careful not to learn our own pirush, our own explanations. But the Rebbe Rashab said that if it's a matter that's going to help you in avodah, if you're going to be able to take some sort of practical lesson, improve your avodas Hashem, then it's okay. So the Rebbe is applying it in a similar way over here, that if it can add in avodas Hashem, it is worth it. It's a good idea to try to take these lessons from the name of the person whose Yortzeit it is, the Rebbe's brother. And the Rebbe now goes ahead to explain the three names of his brother. So first of all, the name Yisroel is a general name of Klal Yisrael, as we said. The name Yisroel seemingly is made up of two opposites. On the one hand, we say Yisroel is a Rosh Tevis, is abbreviation for the words Yesh Shishim Ribui Oisius LaTorah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Just like there are 600,000 general neshamas, and each one is then broken down into another 600,000 neshamas. So there are 600,000 letters. Every neshama has one letter of the Torah. And this letter is sort of the source for his chayas, for his life. That's one aspect of the name of Yisroel. Another aspect of the name Yisroel, the pasuk says, Ki sarisa im elikim v'im anoshim vatuchal. Yaakov Avinu is told that you had commanding power with Elohim, with a malach, as well as with men. as we'll soon see, referring to Lavan and Esav, and you prevailed. So why is this the opposite of the first meaning in Yisrael? When we speak about overcoming malachim and people, seems to be an avodah that we're involved with the world and fighting the world, fighting the malach of Esav, fighting Esav and Lavan, which seems to be the opposite of the word Yisrael, which is more focused on the idea that every Yid has his letters of in Torah, the way Torah is higher in the world, the Yid is higher in the world, removed from the world, and so on. Says the Rebbe, we can understand this in Avodas Hashem, that what it means is as follows. Number one, a Yid has to know that he is Yisrael, that his source of Chayes is a letter in the Torah, and everything that he does needs to be based on Torah. In addition to this, he has to know that in order for his avodah to be perfect as a Yisrael is not by removing himself from the world, but rather, as we said before, histakel b'shloisha dvarim. You need to remember that in addition to your work, your avodah with yourself, your Yisrael, in other words, that letter of the Torah you have, you also need to do the avodah of making a place for Hashem down here in this world. That is, by going out into the world, of course, with the directives of the Torah, being involved with Elokim, which, as we said, refers to the Malach of Esav, also representing the natural koiches in the world, the koiches of Hashem that are within the world. As the Chazal say, that every single blade of grass has a certain koyach up above, making it grow. You need to be involved with Anoshim, with people like Esav and Lavan. Perhaps you need to be involved with Goyim. And there you need to make a place for Hashem with the directives of Torah. As we said, because you have your letter in the Torah. Yisrael is also Yeshishim Ribui Oisiis LaTorah. So you're going to work and make the world according to Torah through Sarisa Im Elikim V'Im Anoshim. That means by you, first of all, becoming sort of that strong power within the world, but Vatuchol, being able to overcome and managing successfully in your avodah with the world. Furthermore, the Rebbe says the word Vatuchol also has another few meanings besides prevailing. The word Vatuchol could also be from the word koil, which means everything. The Rebbe is soon going to explain these different meanings. The word kolul, which means that it includes different things, and kolil, complete. And the Rebbe goes on to explain that this avodah that you're doing sarisa by dealing with the world is not by nullifying and negating the world or overpowering the world, but in a way of utilizing the natural koiches themselves and the physical koiches in the avodas Hashem, and also bringing about that the goyim by themselves should also serve the Eibishter in a way, as we say, Malchusay Berotzin Kiblu Aleim, in a way that they are willing to accept the Eibishter's Mulucha, so that the world itself comes along and says Vatuchol. The world itself, in other words, is coming along and helping the Yid in his avodah. And that's what it means. Vatuchol is also from the word koil. In other words, that there's all the matters of the world. And there's also the idea of hiskalus, which we said before is kolul, means the Yid includes inside of himself all aspects of the world. And yet, what does he do with all of that? He elevates all of that, similar to what we said before, bringing about the geula from the goyla itself, taking all matters of the world and bringing the aleph of alufei shaloylam, bringing Hashem into the picture, bringing Hashem into the world. And through the person doing his avodah, elevating and refining the world, we have another word for vatuchal, another meaning, from the word yecholas, which means ability. That through his avodah, he gets even more power and more ability. That is the nefesh alikis dealing and coming into the nefesh abam as the nefesh alikis gets more power to grow now. Like the pasuk says, Rav tevuos bekoyach shoyer. That a lot of koyach, an abundance comes. Davka, you get lots. Davka through the koyach, through the power of the ox, through the nefesh abamis, you get even stronger koyachas. Now, that's all to do with the name Yisrael. The way to go about this avodah, the Rebbe continues now, is Aryeh Leib. So what does this represent? So first of all, we know there's the idea of Havei Gibor Ka'ari La'asos Retzon Avicha Shabashamayim. We need to be as strong as a lion to do the will of Hashem, as it says in the beginning of Shulchan Aruch, which is about using that strength to overcome all of the concealments in the world, adding in strength in matters of Kedusha. And the Rebbe says the two names, Aryeh and Leib, one is in Lashon Kodesh. So Aryeh would represent utilizing all the koyach in matters of kedusha, but through that, there's also in addition to that, the avodah of being strong also when you're coming and dealing with the worldly things, bringing the kedusha into those things as well, and that's represented through the word leib, which means aryeh as well. It's also a lion, but already in a lashon that's not lashon kodesh, in another language, representing you bringing that kedusha also into the worldly things. The Rebbe now goes to examine the word leib a little closer. And the Rebbe says that the word leib could also have another meaning. The word leib has a lamed and a beis in the beginning and the end of the word, which lamed and beis, of course, is leiv, which means a heart, and in the middle you have the yud. This is a hint, says the Rebbe, to the heart of the yid, and the yud is his 10 koiches hanefesh. Furthermore, the Rebbe says sometimes we write leib with 2 yuds, and that could be referring to 2 levels of the neshama, Yaakov and Yisrael. Because the idea is that the avodah of the Yisrael in making the dira b'tachtoinim is through working with those 10 koiches hanefesh, with your 10 faculties, as they are surrounded with the lamed and the beis, the leiv of the yid, which we know that the heart of the yid is always complete and perfect. Ani yesheina v'libi, we are told. Even if I may be asleep, my heart is always alert to Hashem. So that's what the leiv of the yid, with the yud in the middle. Another pshat Rebbe says that the leiv surrounding the yud could also be a hint to the 3 garments of machshava, dibur, amaisa, thought, speech, and action, which are surrounding the 10 koiches. And as we know, it's the 3 koiches, 3 garments of machshava, dibur, amaisa that actually express and bring about all of the inyanim of the person practically down here lamato. Says the Rebbe, we could connect all of this also with the date of the yahrzeit of Yud Gimel Iyar. Yud Gimel is the gematria of the word echad. There's Aleph, Ches, and Daled equals 13, which is a remez to the avodah that we are bringing about. V'hoya Hashem lemelech al kol haaretz b'yom ho'yi Hashem echad u'shmo echad. The whole avodah is about bringing about, revealing the melucha, the kingship of Hashem, and Hashem's unity in the world, in a way, as we said before, Malchus shebenetzach, that the melucha comes down in a revealed way, and in a way of netzach, that we're victorious also in this particular area. Says the Rebbe in Sif Yud Aleph, based on all of this, we have a number of lessons regarding the avodah of Bnei Yisrael and bringing the Geula, and how we need to prepare ourselves for the Geula, standing mamash so close now at the end of Golos, at the end of Goyla, and hine, just right now the Geula is about to come. First of all, there's an answer for all of those people that are surprised and shocked and getting scared about why we're making such a big shturim, such a big deal, that we need to do everything to bring about the Geula immediately. And since some of these people are very open-minded people, so they express this also in speech, and they express their worry and their surprise. And what they're asking is, when Mashiach will come, of course immediately, what's going to be with all of the achievements, all of the things that we have done during all of these years in Galus? What's going to happen with our business, with all of our possessions, with the money that we have collected, with the friends and acquaintances, with all the connections that we have made, both amongst Yidden as well as amongst Goyim, all of the various different connections that were made in public figures, and so on and so forth. The answer is, there's absolutely nothing to be afraid of. Because Geula does not mean to nullify or to negate all of the matters of the world. All of the good things that were done al pi Torah and Galus are all going to remain. On the contrary, the Rebbe says, Geula means, as we explained, it includes all the good things of the Galus, in a way that they themselves are elevated to a state of Geula, to the real and ultimate and proper way, by revealing inside of them that Aleph, that Alufay Shaloylam, the Eibishter. The whole purpose of each and every single one of these things, as it was in Golus, is going to be revealed. And seeing how each and every one of these things was about revealing the kavod, the glory of the Eibishter. And therefore there's absolutely nothing to worry about. What's going to happen with all of the things that we have accomplished, even in mundane things, things that were done al pi Torah in the times of Golus. On the contrary, we have the Hayrah that every single businessman or the like needs to look for ways how to reveal within his business the glory of the Eibishter, and to utilize his business and his connections and all of these things to add in Torah and mitzvahs. From all of this, we also have a lesson in the other direction. Those people that think that the whole idea of Geula has absolutely no connection to the matters of the world, the Rebbe says, on the contrary, the whole idea of Geula is dafka through our avodah in the time of Golus. And as we said before, that's why you have istakel b'shloisha dvarim. The avodah needs to be bringing Geula with sarisim elikim v'manoshim v'tuchel. It's about bringing the Geula into the world, into dira b'tachtoin, and preparing the world for the Geula. Yes, in a way where we're fighting all of the concealments and the problems of the world, but in a way of vatuchol, which we said before, means that ultimately we get the world itself to willingly accept the Eibishter's Melucha. Beginning with the portion of the world that has to do with us, by adding matters of Torah and mitzvahs in physical things, including and especially the mitzvah of tzedakah, which, as we said before, is the main one of the mitzvahs of action, when one takes from his gashmias and from his richness that the Eibishter blessed him with, and helps another Yid, so that the other Yid should also have clothes and food, in a way of l'chavod l'sefaros, in an honorable way, as is appropriate to every Yid that's mamleches koyanim. And through that he also goes ahead, and similarly, he also goes ahead and helps most of these organizations of Torah and tzedakah, etc. So too, in a person's avodah in mundane areas, he also does everything in a way, kol ma'asechel l'shem shamayim, doing everything for Hashem's sake, and b'chol d'rochecha da'eyu, to get to know Hashem in every single part of his avodah. And most importantly, spreading Torah and Yiddishkeit, spreading Chassidus to the outside, including arousing and awakening Yidden all over the world, they too should add in all matters of learning Torah and fulfillment of mitzvahs. So too, in publicizing and revealing in the whole world the Alufay Shel Olam, the Eibishter, and including also being mashpia, having an effect also on Goyim regarding the fulfillment of their 7 mitzvahs, and that they too should prepare for V'hoisol Hashem Amlucha. Says the Rebbe in Seif Yud Beis, based on all of the above, that Geula is about elevating the matters of Golus itself by making out of the Inyanim of the world a dira for Hashem. And in fact, it is specifically the avodah of Golus that brings the Geula. It's now understood that the matters of the world itself and the Goyim themselves, even in the time of Golus, be'emes, in reality, they are really helping the avodah of bringing the Geula. And the Rebbe says, now standing so close to the end of Golus, so close to the Geula, we could see this in a more revealed way. And as we see in the most recent generation specifically, and more specifically in the most recent times, especially in the very last few days, and the Rebbe explains, in previous generations, most of Yidden were living in countries where there was all sorts of terrible problems against Yidden. Lo yisakum pa'amayim, may that never happen again. Things were stopping, blocking Yidden from serving the Eibishter. Whereas in the most recent times, most Yidden are living in countries where there's a Malchus Acharei-Kedoshim, a kind government. Starting with this country, of course, the United States that I've been speaking about, where most of the Yidden are, which helps Yidden to come to the Geula Pnimis, to the inner Geula in their own avodah. And finally, of course, also doing the avodah to bring the Geula in the literal sense. And then the Malchus Shel Chesed, the government of Chesed, will help the Yidden come to Eretz Yisrael, as the Pasuk says, Ve'viu es kol acheichem, they're going to bring all of your brethren to Eretz Yisrael. The Rebbe says, in this past year, we saw that this attitude towards Yidden spread out to other countries as well. In fact, even that country, the way the Rebbe refers to Russia, even Russia, until where recently there was many limitations regarding the freedom of Yidden and serving the Eibishter and Torah and mitzvahs, and also leaving Russia. Now the whole attitude changed, that they are allowing Yidden to fulfill Torah and mitzvahs. They're allowing Yidden to go out without the limitations and restrictions that were once upon a time. And furthermore, they're even helping the Yidden to travel and to go to Eretz HaKodesh, similar to the way Goyim are going to help Yidden go out of the Golos to go to Eretz HaKodesh by the Geula HaMitzvah Shlema. Continues the Rebbe in Seif Yud Gimel. In addition to the direct assistance that Goyim are helping Yidden, there's also some other areas where we could see that the Goyim themselves are doing acts of goodness and kindness, which this is another area where we see that it's being more revealed that there's a balabais, that there's a boss to this palace, to this place. As a preparation to V'hoisel Hashem Amlucha, when the whole world is going to recognize that Hashem is the only king, there's things that the Goyim are doing now that are also showing that they're beginning to recognize this. Not the way things used to be. It used to be that only Am Yisrael, the one that's the smallest amongst the nations, they were dafka, the ones that brought about Dira B'tachtoinim. And unfortunately, there were nations that were actually acting very, very cruel to each other, and all they were always interested is only in things of their own benefit, or conquering other countries, etc. One of the things that are specifically noticeable these days is as we see that the world itself and Goyim are preparing and paving the way and helping out on the way for the Geula by doing acts of tzedakah and chinuch, as the Rebbe is going to elaborate on these 2 points in a moment, which these are both 2 very, very main yesoidos in having the world as an inhabited place. As the Pasuk says, that's the way the world is supposed to be. Lo sheves yitzara. And the Rebbe explains, it is known and publicized in all the newspapers about recent things that have been going on in the world, how this country, America, a country that is based on tzedakah v'chesed, utilized its mighty power, the army, etc., to go and help people across the world, far away from this country, even though there was no direct benefit to the people of this country. So this country has sent many people, soldiers, to go help refugees in those far places, along with clothes and food and medication, instead of using planes for matters of conquest. Instead of using food and clothes for the citizens of this country, it is being utilized to save unfortunate people, and especially little children, from cold and from chas v'shalom, the opposite of life. So here we could see the compassion of the people of this country. When they heard and saw how there's people across the world that are suffering, even though it's not their own relatives, they never had any sort of contact with them, and yet this country had taken the initiative to go ahead and help them. This is in accordance to the Shita, to the whole way of this country in matters of tzedakah, to go help people in the whole world, not even waiting for the help to be requested. So that's as far as tzedakah is concerned. So too it is known that the president of his country had recently come out with an announcement and specific direction regarding chinuch of the youth, education. And this is in accordance to the fact that in the beginning of his presidency, he announced that his goal is he wants to be remembered as the education president because of the drastic changes for the good that he would like to make in strengthening chinuch in this country. The Rebbe says the chidush, what's so amazing about all of these things, amongst other things, is understood simply. Even though for the Yidden this is never a Chiddush. By Yidden they always acted in a way of Torah and mitzvahs and matters of tzedakah and chinuch, etc. But now we see that the Goyim are acting this way. So this reveals even more that the Eibishter is the boss of this place, because that's the real foundation for all matters of tzedakah and chinuch, as we explained many times, that the real success in chinuch is dependent on the fact that the child knows that the Eibishter is in control of the world, the Eibishter is the creator of the world. The Rebbe says all of this is in addition to the fact of things happening every single day. Ba'ashgacha Prat is both regarding the general klal as well as people in their individual lives. And of course the kavanah in all of this is that this should reveal even more how the world itself is assisting, making a dira b'tachtoinim, bringing about the Geula. The Rebbe adds in the brackets, including the fact that in this past week, in a far off corner of the world, there were some precious stones and pearls found through the bracha of the Eibishter. The Rebbe says this is similar to a pasuk that says by V'anesiim heviu es avnei hashoyim ves avnei hamiluyim lo eifed v'lachoshen, which literally means that the Nesiim brought these precious stones for the eifed and the choshen. But for the big day kahuna, but the Chazal also tell us that the pshat V'anesiim could also mean that the clouds brought them. That means they came in a miraculous way. And of course, again, all of these beautiful things being found and the gems and so on is again to be utilized for the ornaments of kalois and adding in tzedakah, etc., etc. Bottom line says the Rebbe in Sif Yudalud Maskana, what we take out of all of the above mentioned b'negei l'poil. The Geula comes dafka through the Avodah in Golos, revealing the Eibishter, the Alufei Shalolim in the Geula. So in this way, this doyer, which is the last doyer of Golos, becomes the first doyer of Geula. And the Eibishter helps that we could see in all of these latest things going on in the world, how the world itself is helping out and leading to the Geula. And simply this means that each and every Yid needs to add in our actions, our mitzvahs, our deeds that bring the Geula, including, as we spoke in the previous Fabrengen, learning Torah and matters of Geula. In Torah Shebiksav, the Rebbe quotes the Rambam that says that Kol HaSfarim Meleim B'Dover Zeh. All the Sfarim are filled with the matter of Mashiach. And interesting, in Ahara 120, the Rebbe says that what does the word mean? What does it mean, Kol HaSfarim Meleim, that all the Sfarim are filled? The Rebbe says, in addition to the simple pshat, but there's what it could also mean when you say Molei, when Torah says the word Molei, it's full, it means really, literally full. That means to say that really all of the parts of Torah, even those that don't speak in a revealed way about the Geula, or maybe even the opposite, but be'emes, deep down, even they are really all about Geula. And by learning these things deeply, the pirush of these psukim and so on, we could find out and we could see how really Kol HaSfarim Meleim B'Dover Zeh. The Rebbe says this is even more geschmack based on what we said earlier, that really the pnimius of the Golus itself is Geula, and we need to reveal it by bringing the Aleph into the Geula. So that's regarding Torah Shebiksav, and so too regarding Torah Shebaal Peh, Mishnah, Gemara, Medrashim, etc., learning about Geula. Says the Rebbe, within this itself, we need also add, based on the Hira of Pesach Sheni, so Nishtakim Farfallen. It's never too late. We need to make a cheshbon tzedek. If we actually fixed up our avodah properly, or we could still add in this. And there's of course the Hira and koyach given to us that even if we missed out on something, it's never too late, and we can always fix it up. For oid v'ikar, that it should be revealed and fixed up all of the things that seem to have been lost, or that were really lost in the time of Golus, including lost in a positive sense, certain things that are higher than being revealed. The Rebbe says this is referring to the Gilui, the revelation of the Kates, at the end of time itself, as it says, Libo Lepul Molegalia, there's certain things that don't come from the heart to be revealed through the mouth. And Mashiach Tzidkenu, which comes Behesach Hadas, also like something that was lost. He comes unexpectedly and like something that's found, as the Pasuk says, Motzasi David Avdi, a Pasuk in Kapitel Pei Tes in Tehillim. And all of this is even more revealed in Kapitel Tzadik in Tehillim, which is of course the Rebbe's Kapitel that year, where it says, V'hinoyam Hashem Elokeinu Aleinu, the pleasantness of Hashem should be upon us. U'maisi Yadeinu Koinenu Aleinu, U'maisi Yadeinu Koinenu, which is referring to the established work of the Beis HaMikdash that should be revealed. All being revealed by Beis HaMikdash HaShlishi. The Geula HaMitis V'Hashlema, the Geula of all Bnei Yisrael. B'noreinu, B'zkenenu, with our young and our old, etc. B'voneinu, B'vneiseinu, with our sons and our daughters. Just wanted to have a look quickly and on Ha'ara 126, where the Rebbe says something very interesting. The Rebbe says over here, we're speaking about Kapitel Tzadik in Tehillim. The Rebbe says, the Medrash tells us that double letters are generally connected with the Geula. The letters that are doubled in the Aleph Beis, that is the final letters. And the Rebbe says, Lahoyer, to note, that the letters Pei, a double Pei, is the expression that was used when the Yidden were taken out of Mitzrayim. The Pasuk says, Pokoid pokadati eschem. So that it's a double Pei. The future Geula is connected with the tzaddiks, as the Pasuk says, Tzemach tzomachti lochem. The Rebbe points out that Moshe Rabbeinu was also Pei. He was also 80 years old at the time that the Geula came. So it was Poket Pakadati, it's the Pei, but it's also related to the age of Moshe Rabbeinu, that he's 80 years old. And the coming Geula is related to the Tzaddik, that Tzemach Tzomach, that Ish Tzemach Shmoye Mitachtav Yitzmach, which is Tzemach Tzomachti, the idea of Mashiach, who is called Tzemach. Perhaps also to note, as just mentioned, this was the year that the Rebbe is saying, Kapitel Tzadik, may the Eibush to help, we should have the Geula taken from Yad Mamash.